Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all things Stephen King. Well, not really all things Stephen King, but just my things Stephen King. We're gonna talk about my journey on Stephen King, when I started, why I started, and everything that has happened up to now with my journey with Stephen King. And then we're going to talk about my plans for 2022 when it comes to Stephen King's novels. So my love for Stephen King really didn't come into the later stages of my life or current stages of my life. I did not grow up reading Stephen King, watching his movies. I've mentioned this on my channel before. I grew up in a very strict household where I was not allowed to read or watch horror. Maybe that's why I'm such a kid at heart and why I still watch cartoons at my age, because that was the entirety of my young life up to my teens. I didn't start reading Stephen King until 2018, where I decided, you know what the hell, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna start reading him. I had always been intimidated by his work. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the length of his novels. I don't know if it was because some of his books were so old, and I have a really hard time reading books that are really dated, and so I was just intimidated. But in 2018 I was like, you know what, I want to start reading his work, and I want to start reading it in chronological order. Enter Carrie. I think I read 4 pages and I was like, nope, this is just definitely not for me. And I DNF'd the book, I put it down, and I just continued on with my little reading life. And then one day I forgot where I was, but I needed an audiobook, and I saw The Mist come up on Scribd, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna give this one a try. I had scrapped the whole idea of reading King in chronological order, and I can't remember if I decided to like just not read King at all or just go off the course of chronology. And so I saw The Mist, it was short. I said, let me give it a try. I was like, just, I guess in the mood of like ominous, like an ominous story. And to me, The Mist is like very ominous, not being able to see what is out there. I love books that have some sort of sensory deprivation in them. And so I'm like, you know what? I tried it. I liked it. I actually finished it, but it wasn't my favorite. I read The Mist in June of 2018, and it wasn't until October of 2018 that I picked up my next Stephen King. I was talking to my husband. I don't know if I was talking to him particularly about Stephen King, but we just landed on the conversation of him going to watch Christine at the movie theaters as a young boy. I think he was like either 12 or younger, and it was, I think, one of those experiences. He lived in New York where he went to the movie theaters by himself, and that movie creeped him out. He says that he remembers walking outside from the movie theaters and just being freaked out because all the cars parked on the street, as you know New York is, and that he was just really creeped out walking home by himself after watching this movie. And that just, I don't know, I found that so tender, and I decided to pick up Christine in novel form, and I read Christine, and that is where my love for Stephen King began. And I just always find such a sweet connection with Christine because of my husband. After reading Christine and loving it, I decided to watch the movie with my husband, and it was just so fun being able to sit there and him say how silly of me to think that this was scary. But at that time, and as a young boy, I can see how that would have been scary. I loved the movie as well, which I didn't think I was gonna like too much. I thought it was gonna be like super cheesy, and while it was cheesy, I really loved it. Now, I don't know if it was just because I felt a connection with the story being my first King and the connection that I had with the story with my husband, but I love the book and the adaptation equally. So that was my real first experience with Stephen King, and Christine is in my top 5 of his novels. At this point, I knew that I wanted to continue on with Stephen King, but I just did not know what direction I wanted to take. Did I want to go back to reading King chronologically, or did I just want to go off the rails? And I remember my friend Joanne, Jobis89 from Instagram, did a read along on Lizzie's Story. I remember picking up Lizzie's Story at a used bookstore one time. I mean, that book is just beautiful, and I had never heard of it prior to this read along, and I just remember like opening it and loving the naked cover and how the actual cover, why don't I just show you? So like this, and then when you take off the dust jacket, it looks like that, and like this and like that. How elementary of explanation that I did. What did I just say? So I remember seeing this and not knowing anything about it, but I just loved the actual book so much. And I picked it up, and I remember her saying that she was gonna have a read along, and I'm like, what the hell? I have the book, let's do it. Thank God I was in a read along, because I would have DNF'd this book at 150 pages. I just did not like it. But she was just like, you know, just push through, just keep going. And because I felt supported and like motivated by everybody else, I kept going, and this is my #1 favorite book of Stephen King at the moment. 5 stars. I have since then reread it. I mean, my love grew after that so much for Stephen King that I just kept going. That was back in November of 2018. So from October, I went right the next month and read Lizzie's Story. After that, I didn't read anything for the month of December for Stephen King, but in January, I went ahead and read The Gunslinger. I think it was for a read along, but I can't remember, but I picked up The Gunslinger for a reason. Let's say it was for a read along, because I think that's the only way that I would have picked it up. And although I did finish the book, I just did not like it. I was like, oh, I don't know if this series is gonna be for me, but I did finish it, and just, it wasn't for me. I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm gonna continue on with this series. So from January, we're gonna go to March. Like, The Gunslinger left me with just a bad taste in my mouth. I did not want to know anything. But in March, I went ahead and read Pet Sematary, and I think it was for another read along with Joanne and Joanne, I think it's Joanne. And oh my gosh, do I need to say that I loved Pet Sematary? I mean, it's in my top 5 as well for Stephen King, and it was just a fun old time. And then I was like, okay, I'm back into reading Stephen King. I'm gonna continue reading Stephen King. But again, from March, it wasn't until I picked up my next book by him in August, so a few months later. And I don't know why, but I picked up the second book in The Dark Tower. I could have been showing you these books the whole entire time, but I just haven't. I took them off of my shelf, all these books, and I'm not even showing you the books. With book 2, The Drawing of the Three. I still wasn't sold on the series itself, but I was feeling a little bit more, and I liked this one a little more than The Gunslinger, but I wasn't totally sold yet. So I didn't think I was gonna pick up book 3. And the month that followed this book, which was September, because I read this one in August, I ended up reading The Wastelands, and this is where I fall in love with the series, and I start thinking, oh shit, I want to pick up The Gunslinger again, because I feel like in this book, it made me want to go back and start this series again and see Roland through new eyes. With all that being said though, when I initially read The Gunslinger, I had ended up giving that book 3 stars, so it wasn't like I gave it 1 star. I didn't like it, but I liked it, but not enough to think that I was going to continue on with the story. But going into this book, I ended up giving it 4 stars because I thought it was a great story, but it wasn't like I was in love with it yet. And then going into The Wastelands, this was a 5-star read for me, and it's when I really started falling in love with the series. After diving into The Dark Tower a little bit more, The Institute ends up coming out, and I end up picking up The Institute. I really loved that one as well. But then after that, I read The Love of My Life, and one of my biggest intimidations in King world, I don't know what my intimidation was with this, because because I mean, like I said, I fell in love with this. This is just where my heart lies. Now, I don't think I like this more than Lisey's Story, but it's in my top 5. I remember listening to this because I did pick up the audiobook right when we were moving to Georgia. I remember listening to it while I was packing, and this book made me cry so hard. It was a 5-star read for me, and I kept understanding more and more the fascination with Stephen King. By this point, he's a favorite author of mine already. By this point, we're diving a little bit more into the Dark Tower. I read Wizard in Glass, and I also read Wolves of the Kala. I absolutely adored both of these. Yes, I don't have a matching collection, but you know what? It doesn't bother me with Stephen King books, but I like having mix-matched versions of this because I love all the editions. I love this one. I love this one. I have half of the collection in this one, half in this one. I think I have a hardcover somewhere, but it's okay because I love that my Stephen King books don't match. 5 stars for both of these. But unfortunately, this is where my journey ended with the Dark Tower. I have not finished the Dark Tower yet, and I probably won't finish for the next couple of years, and we'll go into that more when we go into my 2022 plans for Stephen King. After this, I end up reading Gwendy's Button Box. I had actually gotten sent the second book in this trilogy. And is it a trilogy or a quartet? I think it's a trilogy, but I end up reading this one because I get the second book, and I really enjoyed this. It's a very short book, and actually book 3, Wendy's Final Task, comes out February 2022. I don't think I will be picking that one up right when it comes out because I haven't read book 2 yet, but I really enjoyed this one. This is a collaboration with Richard Chismar, and Richard Chismar is the one that contacted me to see if I wanted the second book. So here is where things start taking a turn in my journey in Stephen King, because you know what? Now I want to start reading in chronological order again. This was at the beginning of 2020. I have decided, let's read in chronological order. I made a bullet journal spread all about his work in chronology. And I'm like, you know what? We're gonna tackle Carrie again. We're gonna try this, but we're gonna try it with the audiobook. In 2018, I wasn't really big on listening to audiobooks. I did listen to The Mist though, but I think it was the beginning of my journey into audiobooks. And so by 2020, I'm already like full-blown listening to audiobooks. I'm gonna give the audiobook a try. I end up finishing, still wasn't too fond of it. I think Carrie is in my bottom tier when it comes to Stephen King's work. Even though it is a pretty short book, it's not my favorite. I felt bored. It's not my favorite storyline. I can't stand the mom. And you know, I understand that there are books that are gonna get you mad, like Dolores Umbridge in Harry Potter is one of my least favorite characters of all time in my entire world. I will punch that lady in the face, but she doesn't stop me from reading the books or whatever book she's in. This one, I can't stand the mom so much. Carrie as a character to me is just very boring, so I'm very bored by this book, but I'm very happy. I feel very productive in the chronology world because I'm starting. I got past my roadblock for Stephen King in chronological order, and this makes me very happy. So what happens? I start reading Salem's Lot in 2020 and I never finish it. I talk about a scene early on in this book at the 150 page mark that just upset me so much. I remember, you know, I'm new in Georgia, I'm experiencing Stephen King in chronological order, what can go wrong? And I encounter a scene in here that just upset me so damn much that I put the book down, and that's it. Didn't pick it back up. I'm hoping to finish this before I go into 2022. We are in the last couple of weeks of December 2021. Can I do it? Maybe. But I do want to finish this before we go into 2022. Nonetheless, if I go into 2022 without having read this, I will not count this as part of my journey in 2022 though, because I do have plans, and we'll talk about that again later on in the video. I still want to continue on with the chronological order though. Now, I will say, past this point, we are in chronology still, even though I have not finished Salem's Lot yet. We are still on the journey in chronological order. The only way that I will break chronology at this point forward is if new books come out. and they aren't part of the Stephen King universe. Like if it's not connected to any other book, I will read that new book. So far, the only one that I know of is February 2022, which is The Last Task, Gwendy's Last Task. And I won't be reading that one when it releases. But there is another release coming out that is not attached to any of the other book. Again, I will be reading those. So we are on task, but we're still in 2020, and I have read a couple more of his works in chronological order. I've read The Shining, I've read Cujo, I've read Firestarter. I came off of the chronology order. I read Duma Key because it was a buddy read. I read The Stand, Joyland, and Billy Summers. I have a vlog dedicated to Billy Summers. I will link it up above if you want to watch it. But this was the last book that I read from Stephen King as far as new releases go. I have since then reread Pet Sematary, and I have reread Lisey's Story. Unfortunately, I've only read 3 Kings in 2021, which makes me really sad. At this point, I want to pick up the pace with reading his work because he has so many books, and I want to try and read them all in my lifetime. I mean, I'm sure I will. I read more than enough books a year to be able to catch up with his work, but being that I only read 3 of his books in 2021, or actually, I'm sorry, 4 of his books in 2021, it just makes me sad. So moving on to 2022, what are my plans? I want to pick back up in my chronological journey, and number 1, I want to finish Salem's Lot. I already spoke about this. I want to try to read 1 King a month for 2022. Being if I don't finish this in 2021, I do want to finish it in 2022, but I will not be counting this book for one of the months. So possibly in January, I will be reading 2 of his books, and then we'll go from there. Does that mean that I will only be reading 1 book a month? No. If I feel like picking up 2 or 3, I will. But for now, I'm setting the minimum at 1 book, and we'll see how I feel at that point. I'm going to talk about the books that I'm going to be reading for the year of 2022. This is my Stephen King TBR for 2022. I plan on reading the short stories in the Bachman books. The stories that are in the Bachman books were all written throughout their chronology. So I think the first story, which is Rage, was written in 1977. I am going to be reading them in the order that they released, but this one came out in 1995. So by the time that I reach this book, I have already read all the stories inside, if that makes sense. So we have Rage in 1977. Then I'm going to jump into a book that I DNF'd that I haven't talked about yet, which was Night Shift. I tried this a couple years ago, and I don't think that, I left my Carrie bookmark in here. I don't think that Stephen King's short story collections are for me. This is the only one I have tried so far. Actually, I'm kidding. I'm in the middle of different seasons, actually. I've read 2 stories from different seasons, and I do like those, but I was just not liking this at all. But I'm gonna pick up where I left off because I really don't want to reread the ones that I did not like, which is I Am the Doorway, which is story number 4. Then I'm gonna go into The Dead Zone. After that, I'm gonna go into The Long Walk, which is part of the Bachman books. Then I'm gonna go into Dance Macabre, which is a non-fiction work. After that, Road Work, which is also part of the Bachman books. I'm going to go into Creepshow. Now, Creepshow is a graphic novel that he did based on the film adaptation that George Romero did. So that is part, although I'm not putting this as one of the books for the month, I am going to be incorporating that at some point. I'm going to restart The Dark Tower because this is where we go into the gunslinger, and I'm going to be rereading this. I am so excited for 2022 and restarting the Dark Tower series, and I don't think I'm going to be able to end it in 2022, but we'll see because I might sneak in the whole series in 2022. I might not. I might continue it in chronology. If I do continue it in chronology, I won't be finishing this until maybe 2023. Hopefully I get to see 2023, fingers crossed, God willing. Then we go into The Running Man, which is also part of the Bachman books. Then I plan on reading Cycle of the Werewolf, The Eyes of the Dragon, The Talisman, Thinner, Skeleton Crew, and Misery. So up to there is where I have enough books for the whole year, 1 per month. So those are my plans. That has been my journey so far with Stephen King. I love Stephen King. I'm so glad that I started reading him, even though it was very late in my life. I was in my late 30s when I started. Up to now, I have read 13 of his books. I think he has 50 plus books in his arsenal, and I want to experience them all. I know that he has a series that's called The Plant that he hasn't finished yet, and I don't think he's planning on finishing it, and it's like hard to find. Like I haven't been able to find, so I'm scrapping those from my list, and I'm sure there are a few other ones that I will have to scavenger for in used bookstores that are probably out of print, but that's part of the journey with him having so many books, and some of them are probably out of print already. But I'm super excited for 2022 and Stephen King. I'm super excited to jump back into new works. I think this video is long enough. That has been my journey up to now with Stephen King and my future plans with his work. I love his writing. It can be a bit wordy. Yes, that's one of the major complaints of people when it comes to his work. He has very lengthy novels, and you know, sometimes his endings aren't that fantastic, but either way, I just love reading his works. They're just like, for me, they're just like a cozy read, a cozy by the fire kind of story. That's just how I feel when I read his work, and it's not going to be like that for everybody. With that being said, let me know if you like Stephen King's work. Have you read anything by him? What's your favorite work if you have, or your least favorite? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.